Welcome, welcome back. This is part two of our lesson four Bible crash course. We left off with David having the chance to kill Saul in the cave, and more of the story of David continues to unfold in how he's dependent upon the Lord and how God just walks beside him favorably, providing him with great victories. Um, just continuously being his guide. And so we read about this and his experiences in the Psalms and how he continuously calls God his refuge, his strong place. And so it really paints a picture of more than just the story of what happened when, but also the heart of the character in it. And so this is where we know that David was a man after God's own heart. However, even David, a man after God's own heart, can fall into sin. And we see that as David um, was on his roof when his army was off to war, saw a beautiful woman, brought her back to be his wife, and ended up having her husband killed. And so after this, Nathan the prophet comes and says, "What did you do?" Tells the story about the sheep and how one man who had lots of sheep had a visitor, didn't kill his own, but went to the man who had only one, took his sheep and gave that to his guest. And so the first child dies, and David mourns and um, prays on God's behalf for this child while he's sick. As soon as the child dies, he gets up, bathes, and he says something in this that's very telling of who David was. And so, as the baby was said to be dying, and David knew that that was God's will for the child, um, he prayed and fasted on behalf and stood up after and said, I did it because I know God's heart and that he would maybe have mercy and change. And so that's an incredible image of who David was for us. He also, during this time, is promised by God that his throne will be established forever. And ultimately, we know that the throne of David, the one in Jerusalem, was burned and destroyed, but his lineage and his royalty eventually leads us to Jesus, born in the house and line of David, and now rules the world as king forever. And so we lift his name higher because of that. Also, David wanted to build a temple. He wanted to build God a home, a house of worship, and David ultimately made plans, but God said, "No, this is for your son to do. You've shed too much blood," and so this is gone, handed off to his son. One of his sons during this time, his name is Absalom, beautiful, starts proclaiming himself king, and ends up having a revolt, a coup against his father. Ends up being a battle between David and his strong fighting men against the army of Israel. And David wins. Absalom's hair gets stuck in a tree and is killed by the general. And so the the throne of David is secure again. After David um, has Absalom, another one of his sons rises up against him, and in the midst of this revolt, David gives his throne before he dies to his son Solomon. Solomon is the second son that was born to him from Bathsheba, and so the first one passed away. This one, Solomon, was um, supposed to be named Jedediah. Actually, Solomon. He becomes king one night while he's dreaming. God comes to him and asks him for anything. What would you want? What do you need? And so Solomon asks for wisdom, and so God grants it to him, and it's his wisdom that is what makes him famous and expands the kingdom and draws many people to the from the world to him. And they knew that there was a God, but in Israel because of the wisdom that was Solomon possessed. The wisdom even stretched all the way out to the Queen of Sheba. We're not exactly sure where that is, but usually scholars tend to think that she was pretty powerful world leader. She comes, she listens to Solomon and is amazed by his wisdom, asking him all the hardest questions she can think of. Um, Solomon, during this time, he was bringing in tons of wealth and gold from around the world to Jerusalem. It's the golden age, peace and prosperity. And during this time, he builds a temple for the Lord and a palace for himself from the trees of Lebanon. And so after this temple's built, it takes years and years and years to build. And Solomon prays. And after he's finished praying, the Lord's presence fills the temple for 7 days, just smoke, lightning, thunder, just crashing, and it's this incredible sight of how God is dwelling with man. And through this temple, he has a home And there's this place in this temple, it's called the Holy of Holies, and only one priest could go in a year, and they had to go through all these rituals. If there's any defect found in them, they were struck down dead. The Ark of the Covenant was placed there, and so they had this this temple built for the Lord, and Israel could worship God there and only there. Um, this temple was rebuilt in the New Testament as the Romans did it, and there's a curtain in there separating the Holy of Holies from the rest. And we learn about this again when Jesus dies and shows how the Holy of Holies was torn apart because Jesus made a way for man to be right before God, to stand in God's presence, like in Revelation 4. And we'll see that more. And so, because of this, we see that the kingdom was expanded. And as the kingdom expands, so does God's glory and God's image through his chosen people, Israel. Now, we have Solomon's downfall is his many wives, and he has a wife from Egypt, all these other ones, and he builds them temples for them to worship in. And so we see that his heart is not fully committed to the Lord. So Solomon wrote books of wisdom, Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, and he wrote the Song of Solomon's. He built the temple and prayed, and it was filled with his glory. It is said that Solomon had over 900 wives and concubines. And so, if you want to wonder, right, what led him astray, his wives and their foreign gods brought in. It was also a way for people to make alliances. You would let your daughter marry a king of another country. That way you knew they wouldn't attack you. And so ultimately, this led him away from the Lord, and he did not stay true throughout all his days. After Solomon died, we go to his son Rehoboam. After Rehoboam was in power for a little while, he was given advice. People asked him, like, can you take away our burden? Your dad gave us a heavy burden of work, of forced labor, and so he asked, give me some time to think about it. So he goes to his dad's counselors, and they give him, well, you should lighten the load. These are your people, right? Blah 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 blah. And so he rejects that, and he goes to his friends. Like, what should I say? He's like, well, make yourself even more scarier. Rule with even more of an iron fist than your father. And so it goes back to people said, what my dad did is child's play. I'm gonna make it 10 times worse. And so people reject him as king, see that he is not one of following the Lord, not one of David as described, and so they rebel. And so there's a civil war, and Rehoboam is the ruler of the south, while Jeroboam rises up, anointed by the prophet, and to lead Israel. And so there's a civil war between the two. Rehoboam leads and ultimately rules the south, which is made up of Judah and Benjamin, and then Jeroboam rules the north, which is the other 10 tribes of Israel. Both were bad. They both did evil in the eyes of the Lord, leading their people astray, worshiping false gods, and causing these people to fall away from the Lord. They're referred to many times in the rest of Kings and Chronicles as the kings who are comparable. So a bad king in the past is compared to how bad Rehoboam was, or um, the good kings after that follow Rehoboam are compared to David and how he followed the Lord. So they are the example of evil and poor leadership. And so after Jeroboam, he's stripped of his support, and his son eventually loses the king, and his family lineage doesn't last forever. However, God is still faithful to the south and his promise to David to not leave him or forsake his covenant. And we see that in how God is bringing redemption to Israel. And so after this, we find a continuation of almost the same thing that happened during the Judges, is this repeating cycle of the people doing evil in the eyes of the Lord. Punishment comes, threatening comes, and so big bad battles, kings come to conquer. And through this, God brings them back to himself. Good kings rise up, they lead for a little while, but then they fall back into their sin and rejection of God. And so some of the crimes were sacrificing children, and people think, wow, that's terrible. But it's even terrible to think that these children are God's children, part of his plan, and they're worshiping and they're sacrificing God's children to other false gods. And so his anger burns against Israel and Judah, which ultimately leads to their destruction. One of the most terrible kings is Ahab. He was a ruler of Israel, married to the terrible Queen Jezebel. Never name your daughter Jezebel. She led many atrocities, killed all of the prophets of Israel except for a few hundred, saved in a cave, killed an innocent man, took his property, his vineyard, and then the prophet comes to him and says, "You are going to die for this, and you are in your deathbed, and so there's no point in even worrying." Um, which is incredible because Ahab deserves this punishment, but repents. And so we see this repentance and God's heart being turned by a sinful person repenting of what they had done wrong. And so the prophet goes back and says, "You know what? God has heard your repentance. You will not die from this disease, and you will not see this destruction to your family in your lifetime." And so, after hearing this, being convinced of it, he still does not follow the Lord and still continues to lead Israel astray and is remembered as one of the poorest leaders in history. After this, during this time, there's a prophet named Elijah. He is God's prophet. He's continuously doing miraculous signs, calls a drought for 7 years, and he ultimately prays to bring the drought back up. But it is during the same time as Ahaz. Elijah is um, one who says be filled with the Spirit in incredible ways, and is an image of Jesus as being described later on in the prophets as an Elijah, a Messiah coming. Preparing the way of the Lord is John the Baptist. And so he performed many amazing signs and wonders, being fed by ravens in the desert, filling jars with oil. One of them happened. Ahab and all of Queen Jezebel's prophets were worshiping Baal, and it was a competition between Baal and Yahweh. The God that answered with fire was ultimately the real God, and of course that was Yahweh burning up everything, killing all of the prophets, or later ended up having all the prophets of Baal killed, and Elijah fleeing for his life. He is God's vessel to bringing many Israelites back to the Lord. After this, we learn more about the holiness of God. Josiah is a young king, born 7, 8 years, or became king 7 or 8 years old. Found the law in the temple, began to read it. Says we got to get this message out to the people, and so proclaims it as the law. Reads it. God withholds his judgment against the Israelites because of their hearts being turned back to him in repentance, and so the king again is used in the proper way in which God designed for it to draw his people closer to him and to extend his glory around the world. And so we see that in Josiah. However, they continue to fall away from the Lord and they do not walk humbly or upright before him. And so they are eventually given over in their unfaithfulness. So Israel falls to Assyria, and then a little while after, Judah would fall. And however, to Babylon. However, a remnant of Judah is kept and preserved and is brought back to the land of Judah. And through this people, there's the preservation of the lineage of David and um, the the law and the following of the Lord. Thank you for watching this. The time is about to end, so I hope you enjoy it. And next time we will be talking about the exile, the prophets, and the Messiah.